Hello and welcome to the video. This time I'm going to be talking about AI. The pros, the cons, whether we should be worried about it or encouraged by it, what the future may hold, and how it's developed to what it is today. My name is Dan and I'm a software engineer who has worked in lots of different companies and on lots of different projects that have involved AI. Some of that AI has been more in a research environment and some of it has been practical applications. So I feel like I've got a good base knowledge on AI as well as the interest to kind of pursue and investigate some of these areas. So I hope you find this content useful and entertaining and engaging, and let's get into the video. AI has become a prominent topic in the news at the moment, with things like ChatGPT gaining a lot of popularity and being a dominant topic for those people involved in the AI community, as well as the general public. And then there are competitors such as Google's Bard, which is supposed to rival and be a similar chat-based system. And there's, I'm sure, going to be lots of other competitors as well. At the moment, Microsoft have gained a partnership with OpenAI, which are the company behind ChatGPT. And in the next kind of iteration of Bing and Google's Edge browser, this ChatGPT will be integrated inside it. So you won't need to go to OpenAI's system or website themselves in order to use it. It will be built into Microsoft's own software. So I think you'll find that this whole AI and chat-based system, natural language processing and so on is going to become an increasingly popular kind of topic of discussion, but also it's going to become more heavily involved in business and industry as well. So yeah, keep your eyes on that, and it's interesting times. So the first thing I want to do is give an overview of the different kind of types or high-level categories of AI. And broadly speaking, we can break down AI into one of two or three, depending on your perspective, categories. So the first category is known as specific AI, or sometimes it's also known as artificial narrow intelligence. And this refers to a set of kind of applications that AI is built on, and these applications tend to be very, although complex in their nature, they tend to be very fixed in terms of their scope. So what I mean by that is you give a specific problem to an AI to solve, and it will be able to do that problem. But anything outside of the scope of that problem, it will struggle to do. In fact, it won't even be able to, comprehend what that problem is, because AI, while it's getting increasingly advanced in terms of how it goes about solving the problem, it still needs to know the kind of dimensions and the variables and all the things that apply to the problem itself. So it needs to be presented with a kind of outline or overview of what the problem is in order for it to be able to solve it. So examples of this could be something like a chess computer. Now, AI is very, very good at solving chess in the sense that it's now, many years ago, exceeded the ability of humans. So the most advanced chess computer in the world can do better than any human can. But that same chess computer won't be able to play another game. So that is what I mean by specific or narrow intelligence, in that it focuses in on one or a set of specific tasks, and it can do those tasks extremely well. And as technology has advanced, it's been able to do those tasks more and more efficiently. So the next type of AI is artificial general intelligence. And compared to the narrow intelligence that I referred to already, general intelligence has the ability to look beyond a specific problem. It kind of mimics more like human behavior in the sense that it can, analyze and observe the world and then work out what problem it should focus on and solve that in a way that it may not have seen that problem before. So this is something that, while people are getting amazed by artificial intelligence and the advancements it's made, we're still not at the level of artificial general intelligence, because that's the point at which it mimics humans. And it's the thing where you could have an artificial general intelligence go around the world and pick up things and solve problems that nobody's ever thought of, but we're not at that stage yet. And there is a lot of debate in the AI community as to whether this is something that will happen sooner or later, or even at all. This is partly due to how exponentially more complicated artificial general intelligence is. We've been able to work out how to give a particular problem to an AI figure out ways of feeding that AI information in a format that it can intake, and then based on that information, it can work out how to do something. But compared to artificial general intelligence, it has to infer these things by itself. And this requires a whole new level of complexity and advancement. And like I said, we may reach that in the coming years. And there are some very well respected people in the industry who think this is coming in the next few years, whereas other people think we're probably not even going to see it in the next 50 or 100 years. So it is an interesting topic, and we'll see where we get to. And lastly, the other category of AI, which some consider to be a category and others don't, is artificial superintelligence. And this is kind of an extension of artificial general intelligence, but to the point where it's better than humans at pretty much everything. So if we at all get to the place where, artificial superintelligence becomes a thing, then officially robots or machines or AI will be the most intelligent species or thing on the planet. So that will be interesting, but this is more of a theoretical concept. Some people don't even include that as a category because it's just an extension of AGI. So yeah, we'll have to see with that one, and it's very possible that we don't get to that point in our lifetime. But having said that, one of the experts in the field of AI, which is Mo Gaudat, and he was the chief business officer at Google X. Google X is Google's experimental division. So they do everything from flying cars to, self-driving cars and all the kind of experimental stuff that you don't really think about, but goes into the category of advanced and more extreme types of projects and research. Mo Gaudat has written a book actually called Scary Smart, and this book goes into everything to do with AI, the fears, the things we need to be aware of, but also some of the potential positives that come out of it and some of the solutions and the end goal of AI. So in his book, he theorizes that by 2029, AI will officially become more intelligent than humans. And if this is the case, then it kind of implies that AI has become a general intelligence, because already on an artificial narrow intelligence level, AI is more intelligent than humans at that very specific task. But like I said before, it is limited to just that task. But if we get to a point where AI will be officially more intelligent than a human, then it implies that we will be at a point where the artificial general intelligence will have become a thing. So that's his first prediction. The second prediction is that by the year 2049, AI will be officially 1 billion times more intelligent than humans. And this is kind of when we're bordering onto the artificial superintelligence kind of dimension. So that is his prediction, and he's got a lot of insight, so it's very possible. But I know other people, again, who argue that AGI or ASI are not really going to be a thing, or are not going to be a thing in the next 50 or even 1 or 2 generations. So this is up for debate, but again, that's one particular perspective, and I definitely admire and respect Mo Gaudat a lot. So yeah, it's definitely something to check out if you're interested. It's Scary Smart. So the next thing I want to talk about is some of the short-term expectations around AI, some of the practical applications that are going to come out of it. And over the next maybe 6 months to 4 years, these are the kind of things you can expect to see with AI applications. So the first is like the chat-based applications like ChatGPT. I think this will become quite widespread to the point where most search engines or web browsers are going to have some form of chatbot functionality built in. So I'm not aware of like Apple or Safari doing it yet, but that may happen. With Google, we already have Bard, which is, it had a minor setback, but I expect that to be resolved and that being in the kind of public domain in the next few months. ChatGPT, the one that everyone's been talking about over the last few months is ChatGPT 3, but ChatGPT 4 is going to be integrated with Bing and Microsoft Edge. So keep an eye out for that one. I expect that to be available over the next few months as well. And I'm sure there's going to be other competitors to be aware of as well. I mean, there already are lesser known ones that have varying degrees of success and efficiency, but I think they're the large AI companies and tech companies are all going to try and get involved in this space. The next obvious section that I would expect to see AI develop as well is in the medical space. So already we have AI that can be trained on medical images. These images could be X-rays or physical photos of a particular, say, skin condition. And over time, this AI will become increasingly efficient and accurate at predicting what the condition, the underlying condition is, or if it exists in the first place. So what will happen, I think, in combination with the chat system is the whole medical industry will probably revolve around using AI to assess the first level of care. So, for example, rather than going to your GP for absolutely everything, I expect AI to become a more dominant player in that if you have a particular condition you're worried about, you can check with a high degree of accuracy what that condition is, if it at all exists, using AI's chat systems where you can input your symptoms, but as well you can maybe integrate that with some medical kind of apparatus where you can monitor your heart rate or blood glucose levels or take an image of a particular thing that you're worried about, and the AI will be able to digest all this information and either give you some comfort or give you some information that you need, and in certain cases forward you on to the right medical I guess routes in your particular country. The next one is sport, and this is something that at the time of recording there's been a lot of controversy recently with in the footballing world with sport and VAR, which is video assisted referees. And last week the Premier League kind of came under scrutiny because there were several referees who made human errors in their ability to work out whether something was offside or not. And I suspect over the next few years, at the very least, AI will be used to assist these video assisted referees, or maybe down the line it may replace them entirely, because when it comes to something objective, AI typically is much more efficient and accurate at giving that kind of accurate binary consensus. So this is something I expect to be used a lot more. And in the case of football, one of the complaints with say VAR is that it takes a long time to get to the correct answer. Sometimes it can take 30 seconds, sometimes several minutes, whereas an AI wouldn't linger on this. It can do this analysis instantly. So this is again a case of artificial narrow intelligence, which is you give it a specific problem, give it lots of training data. So in the case of VAR, it might be give it hundreds and thousands of different VAR kind of situations or offside decisions, tell it which ones are correct, tell it which ones are incorrect, and based on that collection of data, it will be able to infer in future scenarios whether something is offside or not. So I expect sport to be something where AI is integrated a lot more in the next few years. And, there's debate whether that's a good thing or not, but when it comes to giving an accurate and timely response, I think it will be a good thing. So, yeah. The other obvious ones, which have already been happening over the last few years, but will continue to happen, is manufacturing and retail. So people are probably already aware, but in the large factories and offices and warehouses and facilities, there are already lots of robots automating this whole process. So the postal system, for example, the Amazon warehouses, all uses a lot of automation and AI to more accurately and quickly assess a particular package for where it's supposed to go, and then process these things much faster than a collection of people could do. But I expect this to go up a notch. So even with more local retail, you already have the Amazon stores that are popping up around the world and certainly in the UK. And these stores allow you to go in, pick up what you want, and just walk out the store and it automatically charges you. And this avails of different forms of technology, camera technology, visual technology, and a lot of different sensors. But I expect this type of thing to become more common as well. So yeah, retail and manufacturing all benefit hugely from automation. And I think rather than relying on people who at the very best can only operate to a certain extent or for a certain number of hours, AI can do this 24 hours a day at peak performance, and this will obviously speed up the efficiencies in these industries. So that will definitely be something that will increase as well. So with all this said, I guess it begs the question, should we be worried? So in my last video, I talked about the concept of fear, what we can do about it, how to resolve it, and how to understand it. So following on from that, my goal of this video is to help kind of uncover some of the truths behind AI, help prepare our expectations so that we can more accurately work out what's going to happen. And if it kind of alleviates some anxiety, then that will be a great benefit and outcome of this video. So the obvious question is, should we be worried about job losses? And the thing about this is, with every technological revolution, you will find that it mimics the same behaviors and patterns that you see with financial markets, in that you have rapid periods of growth followed by a small window of kind of decline, which in the case of financial markets is a recession. So with all of these technological revolutions, and the same thing happened in the Industrial Revolution, where people's jobs were replaced, or factories were created for certain tasks, and people had to find new ways of adapting and evolving to the new working world. And then we had things like computers in the like 1900s, and this also replaced people because people didn't have to automatically calculate things or add things up or do basic operations. Instead, computers could do this much more accurately and efficiently. So in the short term, it's quite reasonable to think that there will be certain people or certain industries that are affected by AI. But in the long term, you will find that it's going to be a net positive in terms of job growth and opportunities. And also it will kind of reshape the types of jobs that we're going to be doing. So in the case of 100 years ago, when people working in factories doing very specific tasks, like I always think back to the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory example, well, the modern one at least. And the father of Charlie in this movie, he used to work in a factory where his sole job was to screw on the tops of toothpaste containers. And obviously it's a contrived example and it's an exaggeration, but the fact that this was the case, and then this got automated later on, and he ended up being the person who worked as a operator or technician that monitored and fixed the robot that ended up doing the same job. I think that's sort of a reasonable example or metaphor for how things will go in the future with AI as well. There will always be kind of short-term losses, and I think what it'll do is it will test people's resilience and grit, in that you need to try and stay positive, because the long-term future almost certainly will get better. But for the time being, as we're going through a transitional period, and it's, like I said before, the equivalent of a recession, where we've got a few years of negative or decline in the markets, and people will start to panic and lose jobs and so on. But in the long term, more jobs will be created. So in the case of finance, by timing the markets well, you can actually make a lot of money even in a recession. And in the case of AI, there'll be a lot of money to be made, but also a lot of opportunities to be made as well. So it will favor the people who are most adaptable, and the people who are most determined and strong-willed and open-minded. So if you have any immediate fears of your job being replaced by a machine or something like that, know that there will also be a ton of jobs created, most likely in things like creativity or the creative industries, that will allow you to do something that's more kind of challenging and stimulating and less monotonous, and probably gives you more room for kind of financial stability and making money and success as well. So that's how I see things. I think that the world will pose a lot of new opportunities, and generally the people who get there first tend to be the most successful. So when you think of the age of IT and computing, people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and several others all got there first and ended up becoming extremely successful. And in the case of the internet, we have people like Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos who saw an opportunity, got there first, and became extremely successful. So I expect the same thing will happen with AI, in that if you have the foresight and ambition and desire, I think there's going to be opportunities that we don't yet know will exist, but they will arise, and everyone is going to be frustrated at why didn't I think of that? But the same thing will happen in the AI space. That will create jobs, it will create opportunities, it will give you leverage and tools that will make things easier. And I think we're already starting to see it in the influencer space, that these are things that weren't jobs 10, 20 years ago, but suddenly now people are becoming multimillionaires just by being a social media influencer. So I think, given the opportunity to use these tools to create businesses and to create applications and projects, will be quite an exciting time. So if you are worried about it, I would say try to be that person who is adaptable, who is positive, and sees the potential in these transitions, because that'll be what allows you to be not only more successful if you decide to pursue that, but also more content and stable, and be more appreciative of the opportunities that will arise. It's interesting because we are quite lucky to be living in a time where we've undergone several technology or human advancement revolutions. So each time one of these happens, there's many opportunities for people to do very well out of it. And normally these types of things happen every several hundred years, or going back further, every 1,000 or so years. So we had things like the revolution of farming, and the revolution of the printing press, and then the revolution of the Industrial Revolution. And then we had electricity, and then IT, and then the internet. And we're having several of these condensed into a period of 1 or 2 generations. So people who are born, for example, in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, have had the opportunity to make use of computing, then make use of the internet, and now make use of AI. So I think it's something that if you stay upbeat, you will be able to not only enjoy these kind of transitions and the advancements, and we get to live in an era where so much is developed in such a small amount of time. And I think that this will be something that will forever shape how we move forward as a species. So yeah, I'm more optimistic than negative overall. So I think an interesting, philosophical point to bring up is how we decide to act, and just the decisions and choices that we make will directly influence how technology and AI will evolve as well. So the way AI works currently is a contrast to what most people, in the sci-fi world used to think, which is, the future of AI is going to be robots marching down the streets with guns controlling us. But in actual fact, even at its worst, it's extremely unlikely that will happen. Instead, the more likely scenario is AI is going to influence not in a physical sense, but more in a kind of mental or psychological or emotional sense. And it's already been doing this for a few years, in that when you consume social media or content like YouTube or search engines, AI is recommending you content based on your own preferences, but ultimately the thing that it thinks you will be most likely engaged with. So over time, this data set that's been built up of human preferences and interests, and it's building up a kind of a model for what people as a whole are like. And I think this data set, as well as future data sets, will go on to shape a more, general AI in how it perceives humans to be, what it likes, what it doesn't like, what humans tend to do under certain conditions, etc. So this is probably an important point that has been brought up before by Mo Gawdat, in that the things that we do and the behaviors that we exhibit, and whether we are shown to be a compassionate species or someone that thrives off negativity, these are the things that will influence what AI thinks of us, for the lack of a better phrase. And if we can make good, wise decisions, you'll find that AI will come to much more healthy and beneficial conclusions much more quickly. So one of the things that Mo Gawdat believes is that at some point in the future, we're going to live in a kind of a blissful utopia-like world. But the question is not if, the question is when. So this will happen, according to him. And I also kind of believe this as well, because the biggest limitation on where humans can go is generally the human limitation. So we're governed by politicians who, at the best of times are nice people, but at the worst of times make people frustrated, or the politicians themselves are self-serving or they're deceitful. So by having something that doesn't have that human error where it's self-serving, it's negative traits such as jealousy or envy or disappointment or any of these things, these emotional traits largely that cause people to exhibit their worst qualities. And AI won't have that. And I'm not implying that AI will definitively become our future politicians, but I think they will at least mediate some of these decisions so that it can look at things more objectively and it can analyze whether a politician is doing something for the good or bad or any number of things. So I think by having this influence and this kind of intermediary, we will find that progressively over time, we will get to a point where the objective beneficial decisions are being made. But along the way, there are going to be hurdles, and some of those hurdles could be minor or they could be very significant. And I think the way that we decide to behave and act and communicate with one another on social media will influence the decisions and the knowledge and the models that these AI systems will have in the future. So it's kind of a lesson to be almost like a parent in that the way you would raise a child, if you set it good morals and you lead by example, the child will go to learn traits like integrity and honesty and altruism and so on. And I think AI will also do this. Moes' kind of hypothesis is when we advance far enough, AI will be able to help us live in a world of plenty. So this is going to be the utopia where it's much better to live in a world where there's plenty of everything than scarcity. And it's also the model that nature tends to go with anyway. So if you think the whole model of nature, natural selection and so on, it tends to favor keeping things alive, propelling things forward. And AI, if nature is the most advanced form of AI, then AI will, get closer and closer to that model as it advances itself. So if you, fast forward the clock enough, in theory, AI will come to conclusions that nature has come to, in that it's better to live in a world of plenty and a world of prosperity. And again, it's not a matter of whether we get there, it's a matter of when we get there and how easy that journey will become. So I think it's an important point to be aware of, and by spreading good messages and trying to set a good example and show the best of what we can do either as an individual or as a collective unit, I think it will definitely help things come to the right conclusions. So I'm going to end the video there. Thank you very much for watching. And my goal going forward is to create more videos on various topics, but also delve more into AI and maybe go into more depth with how some of these things work, because I'm a firm believer that if you understand how something works, then you're going to be less fearful of it. Whereas people who, jump to conclusions and make massive leaps tend to assume the worst in things because that's how we're programmed. So I think if we delve into some of these ideas and understand how these things work, I think you'll find that AI isn't quite as scary as you probably, or many people do believe that it is. So again, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.